What's going on, guys? Y'all already know it's your boy Vic, and welcome to Collective Concepts. And this is going to be episode 2. And today, July 19th, 2019, Nas has just dropped his sequel to the original Lost Tapes entitled The Lost Tapes 2. 17 years in the making, but it has finally happened. And I want to give you guys my opinion on this album because I've seen so much stuff going around on the internet, and I feel like a lot of people are just saying certain things because they want to copy what other people say. Like, I feel like a lot of people aren't really thinking for themselves. So I want to go ahead and address what I'm seeing and share my thoughts on this album, right? Now, in case you guys don't know, the original Lost Tapes album that Nas released back in 2002 was an album that was comprised of previously unreleased tracks that were recorded during the sessions of his albums I Am, Nostradamus, and Stillmatic. The thing about the Lost Tapes is that many of these songs were actually complete, because many of these songs were actually songs that were supposed to be on I Am and Nostradamus, because that album was, I Am and Nostradamus was originally supposed to be released as a double disc album entitled I Am, the Autobiography. But what happened is, since so many people started leaking the songs off the album, Nas had to basically record new material and reorder the track list. So some songs that were originally made and completed for those albums made it onto the Lost Tapes, right? As well as some stuff that didn't make it on the final version of Stillmatic. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up right before I talk about the Lost Tapes 2 is because it's important to understand what the original Lost Tapes was, right, guys? So the Lost Tapes, I want to talk about why the Lost Tapes, what it was intended to do, right? As you guys, in case you don't know, let me not assume that you do, Stillmatic was released during the height of the Jay-Z and Nas feud, right? So Stillmatic was an album that brought Nas to widespread acclaim again. You know, everybody loved the album. They were digging it. Nas is getting a lot of momentum. People think that he won this beef with Jay-Z, you know, so he has a lot of momentum going for him. So that was the whole reason why the Lost Tapes even came out, to basically help capitalize on that momentum that Nas had going for him at the time. So before the release of Nas's follow-up to Stillmatic, which would be 2002's Godson, they decided to drop the Lost Tapes in there, you know, just to keep the momentum. The Lost Tapes, the reason why I say that is because the Lost Tapes wasn't necessarily meant to be a classic. I consider it a classic, and many others would consider it a classic too, but it wasn't really meant to be a classic. It just happened to be a classic organically. It was really just meant to capitalize and put out material for the listener before Nas's other album came out, to just capitalize on that momentum he had on Stillmatic, right? So now this brings up to the sequel, The Lost Tapes 2. All right, guys. In my opinion, The Lost Tapes 2 was great. An excellent album. I love The Lost Tapes 2, man. I love it. Do I love it more than Lost Tapes 1? No. But to be fair, can we really make that comparison, guys? We've had 17 years to sit with the original Lost Tapes, whereas Lost Tapes 2 has just came out literally today. But I've already went through the album 4 times from start to finish, so I can actually talk about it now, right? So the Lost Tapes 2, just like the Lost Tapes 1, is lost tracks, right? Except these sessions, the songs from this album come from the sessions of his albums Hip Hop Is Dead, Untitled, Life Is Good, and between the sessions of From Life Is Good to Nasir. So these come from another 3-album cycle, just very similar to the original Lost Tapes. So now I have some notes here, and let's get over it, right? I mean, let's go over it. Okay. So the album opens up with No Bad Energy, right? No Bad Energy is dope, and this was, I actually did my own research, guys, to try to find out which session some of the songs were recorded in. And I'm gonna let you know to see if you guys can, if I can give you some insight for you to be able to tell, you know, oh, this song must have been recorded during this era of Nas, or this song was recorded during this era, you know. So I'm gonna tell you guys that right now. So the opener, No Bad Energy, great, I loved it. Nas just going in, giving you that amazing flowing cadence that he's known for, you know, much wiser, you know, nice gruff and grit to his voice. And this was recorded during the Swiss Beats sessions in 2016. So this is actually one of the more modern songs, you know, in terms of recordings go on this album. Vernon Family is followed up by this song, Vernon Family, and that's dope too. And this was recorded during the Life is Good sessions. And then it just goes into the Scat Attack. I'm just gonna call that the Scat Attack because I think the song is officially called the Jeru of rap, but I'm just gonna call it the Scat Attack for short. This song, the Scat Attack, may be the only skippable song to me on this album. Maybe Scat Attack and Royalty. These two songs aren't necessarily bad, but I know that not everybody's going to appreciate them and not everybody's going to want to listen to these tracks every time they listen to the album. So when I say that these tracks are skippable, I'm not saying that they're skippable in the sense that they're whack. I'm saying that they're skippable in the sense that not everybody is probably going to want to go back and listen to them. But still, these tracks are okay to me. But the next highlight on this is this song called The Lost Freestyle, which is produced by Static Selector. My gosh, bro. Go listen to The Lost Freestyle, man. This was actually the first track that Nas previewed off this. It was a little preview when he did the trailer, the Lost Tapes 2 trailer. This was the song that was playing in that trailer. And my God, flowing like butter on this, bro. Amazing. And then the Lost Freestyle transitions into Tenasia. Tenasia, produced by the one and only RZA of the Wu-Tang Clan, man. Fire. Like I said, Royalty was another good track, which comes after Tenasia. And it's a dope track to mellow out and vibe to. And I actually think it was placed appropriately on the album because, you were just bombarded with this bar fest of Lost Freestyle and Tenasia. So I think that he put that song there, to sort of give your mind a break where you could just divulge in some lyrics and, just chill with a nice, good chorus. So Royalty is dope, but again, it's a song I could see some people maybe skipping. Not because it's bad, but because people, again, won't always want to return to it. Who Are You is a dope song. This was recorded during the Life is Good session, some introspective track. Who are you? What's your purpose? What's your meaning in life? What do you want to do? You know what I mean? What makes you you? Why are you the way you are? You know what I mean? It's a track that makes you question things about yourself. Very introspective track, and it was great, man. Adult Film. This track, just like the opener No Bad Energy, was recorded during the Swish Beats sessions in 2016. And this song actually features Swiss, and it's actually different though, because it's not the typical Swiss feature where he yells on tracks all the time or just does ad-libs. He actually does a nice little chorus interlude on this, and he's actually doing a little bit of singing instead of just yelling over a track. And I think it actually sounded really good and mellow on this. I think it actually fit well. And it was nice to see Swizz actually doing something different than what he usually does, and Nas incorporating it into this work of art. You know what I mean? It was great. I love the Adult Film. This is one of my favorite songs. War Against Love is another great track. And this song, I feel like this song was recorded during the Untitled sessions, because the Untitled album, if you guys remember, back in 2008 was an album that was a very politically charged album. It dealt with racism, capitalism, social economic issues. You know what I mean? And this follows the theme of that album very, very, almost scarily similarly. Like very, very too similar to be a coincidence. The song War Against Love is just that. He talks about how world leaders and influencers in the world basically have a war on love. They want to keep us all fighting against each other. They don't want to see people unite. They want to see people always divide themselves based on religion, class, color, creed. They want to keep the war going. They want to prevent love, because with love, their wars would be meaningless. People would always be against their wars. But if they always try to separate and divide us for different reasons, it keeps the war on love going. You know what I mean? It keeps fueling their ulterior motives that they have to keep power in the world. So this song was really good. War Against Love. I love this track. The Art of It. Woo! The Art of It goes in, man. Produced by Pete Rock. This song was fire, man. Go check this one out. The Art of It, produced by Pete Rock. Fire. Highly Favored was dope too. Another one of my favorites. It Never Ends was fire. Oh my gosh. It Never Ends is absolutely fire, bro. And the instrumental is great. Go listen to those two tracks, guys. The Art of It, It Never Ends. Highly Favored was dope. You Mean the World to Me, which was produced by Kanye West, and it was recorded during the Hip Hop Is Dead sessions. And this song has more of sort of a Kanye-esque, what you would expect from Kanye in 2006. You know, a graduation-esque type style of production. And it was great, man. You Mean the World to Me is a great song that talks about one of not a girl, like it's a hypothetical scenario of a girl that's obsessed with Nas and she leaves her partner for him, and he basically talks about the struggle of trying to make that relationship work. Like it's a great song. I can never do Nas justice lyrically. You got come on, guys. I can never do Nas justice. Queensbridge Politics. Oh my God, this one right here got me messed up on so many levels, man, because it just the lyrical content is amazing and it's so deep, man. It's an amazing narrative, and it regards the death of Prodigy. As you guys know, Prodigy from Mobb Deep died, I think, of February of 2017, man. Rest in peace, Prodigy. And basically, Prodigy, you know, always repped Queensbridge, and Nas is basically talking about how Prodigy didn't get a chance to mend certain things with Prodigy, and Prodigy didn't get a chance to mend and build back certain bridges with others from the hood, from Queensbridge, which is what also resulted in people from Queensbridge, you know, putting graffiti all over his mural and stuff like that. He talks about how he wishes things could have ended differently, and at least wishes that Prodigy could have found solace, you know what I mean, before he passed, you know, and could have made amends with certain people from the hood. A beautiful track, man. Queensbridge Politics. I love this track. This track called Beautiful Life, the closing track, Beautiful Life. Amazing. This song right here, Beautiful Life, is also one of my favorites, and it's a closing track. And this is one song that is probably the easiest to tell which session that it came from. This song you can easily tell came from the Life is Good sessions. Easily. This to me, I even have a theory of my own that this is supposed to be the title track to the Life is Good album, because he references the title of Life is Good all over. I think the original title of the song was supposed to be Life is Good, Beautiful Life, you know, in parentheses. But he just puts everything on wax on this album. He talks about his issues with his first baby mom, Carmen Bryant, who even published a book about Nas, and he addresses people that think that whole feud that he had with Jay-Z was over Carmen. He's basically saying that that's all not true. And he also addresses Khalees, you know, and how she was bitter towards Nas for, she was trying to, you know, put a bomb, like a little bridge, a divisive bridge or wall between Nas and his son, and how she was bitter that the courts gave Nas the position to, the permission to see his son again and establish a relationship with his son. He talks about some serious stuff in Beautiful Life, man. Deep subject matter, man. Seriously deep subject matter in a way that only an MC like Nas knows how to deliver to us, man. Overall, man, this album is one of Nas's best in years, in my humble opinion, guys. To me, this album absolutely destroys last year's Nasir. Not that Nasir was a bad album, but it definitely was not worth the 6-year wait from Life is Good to Nasir. It wasn't worth a 6-year wait. This album was very good and destroys Nasir, in my opinion. And it's Nas's best album since Life is Good. And if you really want to argue it, I can see some people even saying that this is his best album since Godson. I know a lot of people are going to kill me for that, but that's just honestly how I feel. I'm not trying to be a Nas white knight or anything like that. That's just honestly how I really feel about this. I feel that this was put together well. The production and beats on here was great. Nas is sharp. His cadence, his flow, his delivery, his wordplay, his subject matter, his content, breath control. Nas in top form. And this to me is a worthy successor to the Lost Tapes. The original Lost Tapes is more gritty, grimy production, you know, with some jazz influence sprinkled in here and there. It's much more raw. Whereas the Lost Tapes 2, on the other hand, is the more mature of these two. It's more mature than raw. You know, it has much more jazz and classical influences. And it has Nas talking about a much, you know, more mature subject matter pertaining to his life now compared to the original Lost Tapes 17 years ago. It shows growth and development, which is what I want to see in my artists. You know what I mean? And that's what I love about this project, the Lost Tapes 2. And, you know, I've seen some people complaining, saying some songs aren't mixed as well as others. Well, what do you expect? It's a Lost Tapes 2. It's a collection of songs that were unreleased, from various sessions. So obviously the sound isn't going to be the same because they weren't all recorded in one session. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm actually giving him a pass on that. It's the same thing with Kendrick Lamar with Untitled Unmastered. Untitled Unmastered was a compilation of tracks that were originally recorded during the To Pimp a Butterfly sessions. But obviously those tracks didn't make the final cut. So a lot of those songs weren't necessarily mixed the best, but you can still appreciate what Kendrick put out, and that was still a quality body of work. Just like the Lost Tapes 2, man. Some people out here I see are saying that this album was lackluster and it didn't do anything for them. Hey, I can't knock their opinion. They're free to have and share their opinions and believe what they wish. I'm just sharing mine, and I don't know what those people are talking about. This album is great. It has a nice mix. So a lot of songs, they don't all sound the same. They differ, which is great. And like I said, Nas just delivering you a nice story and concepts, and everything that you could want from Nas is in this, man. And for me, I personally don't see this album being anything lower than an 8 score review rating. For me, I personally give this an 8.5. So for me, the highest I think this album would be is a 9, and the lowest this album would be is an 8. For me, I personally give it an 8.5, and I personally put this album, right in there with Life is Good, and you can even argue this to be on Godson level, in my opinion. For me, this, Godson, and Life is Good are basically interchangeable for me personally. Again, I know that the album just came out today, but like I said, I gave this album 4 listens, guys. So that's why I felt compelled to talk about it now, and I felt like I was ready to talk about it now. What I would also like to go ahead and say is people bashing this album because it's not as good as the first Lost Tapes that doesn't make sense to me. You know what I mean? It's so stupid. It's like The Game. The Game, when he came out with the documentary 2 and the documentary 2.5, those albums weren't whack to me just because I didn't think they were better than the original documentary. Yeah, I think that the original documentary is better than those 2 albums, but those 2 albums were still great in their own right. They were still dope bodies of work, and they were still very compelling bodies of work with excellent replay value. And that's how I feel about this album, man. The Lost Tapes 2 is great. And the fact that Nas can basically take his throwaway tracks, put them together in an album, and it still come out at this level of quality just shows you the type of artist that Nas is, man. So for me, Lost Tapes 2 is an excellent album. I enjoyed it. There's only maybe 2 skippables, like I said, the Jeru of Rap, the Scat Attack, and maybe Royalty for me. Sorry about that, guys. My camera cut off. I would just want to say that this album, again, what I was trying to say before my camera cut out, is just that there are only 2 skippables. And I wanted to make this final point before that camera cut, man. And that's this. This album is just lost tracks assembled into one project, which is why, to me, it's sort of unfair to say that this isn't as good as the original Lost Tapes. People are saying, oh, it doesn't have the sound of the original Lost Tapes. You're missing the point completely. The original Lost Tapes didn't have a sound. You know what I mean? The original Lost Tapes, it didn't really have a sound because the original Lost Tapes were just lost tracks. You know what I mean? There was no definitive sound. It's not like he came in and recorded an album. They were just tracks scattered across. But the reason why this sounds a bit more spaced than the original Lost Tapes is because, remember, the sessions between I Am, Nostradamus, and Stillmatic was from what? 1998 to 2001? So that was really only a 3-year gap of space. Whereas this is covering essentially from what? 2006 to 2019. So 2006 to 2019, that's covering quite a bit. You know what I mean? Quite a bit. Damn near 50, a couple years, loads of years of space in between. Like, you get it? The time between albums isn't as tight knit with the original Lost Tapes, with this album as it is with the original Lost Tapes. With the original Lost Tapes, this was the time between these tracks was all within a 3-year time span, whereas this was significantly longer. So that's why I say it's really not fair. So for me, I also want to get one last thing across, guys, which is this. There are 3 ways that I personally recommend listening to this album. 1, listen to it on its own. You just start the album and then just listen to it all the way through and enjoy it. 2, listen to Lost Tapes 1 and then listen to this right after, which is what actually I did last night. at 11, around like 10:30, 11ish, I started the original Lost Tapes. So by the time when the original Lost Tapes had finished, this album I already had ready for download in my Apple Music. So I listened to the Lost Tapes 2 right after. So you can either listen to it on its own, listen to Lost Tapes 1 and then Lost Tapes 2 right after, or you can do this. Listen to Godson, then listen to Life is Good, and then listen to the Lost Tapes 2. The reason why I say that is because Godson, was a very introspective Nas album as he made it, in light of his mother passing away. He was inspired and he, let out his emotions the only way he knew how, through music, man. Life is Good, he did the same thing with his recent divorce and breakup with Khalees, which is what helped result in that album. And the Lost Tapes 2 just talks about so much depth and references a lot of stuff from Life is Good. So for me, that order works too. So listen to this album on its own. Listen to this album after the Lost Tapes. So listen to it in a combo. Lost Tapes 1, then Lost Tapes 2. Or listen to it in this combo. Godson, then Life is Good, and then Lost Tapes 2. And that's it from me, guys. Amazing. Again, for me, final score, 8.5 out of 10. The way I see it, the lowest you can give this one is an 8. And the highest I'd probably give this one is a 9. Right now, at this point in time. Great job, Nas. It's your boy Vic. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm out. Peace.